The issue of tree planting, I agree that we could have done better.
There's a handshake.
but not the bubble. This is not an eating handshake. This is a handshake of ideas. But it's to say that I agree the National Tree Growing Day could have been done better. As I said when you were starting, these are IMF's prescriptions.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel we are overzealous in the way we implement them. But let me move away from that and say this on the issue of fuel. First and foremost, there are two things here. One is what you've asked, and then secondly is what is gracing our headlines today. Still on fuel, the debacle that is Ann Njeri Njoroge. And I want to start with that of Ann Njeri and say that, one, anytime you think or imagine that security officers could be involved in kidnapping, like we saw in the previous regime, it sends chills down my spine. And I must say, even the thought of it, not leave alone the action, even the thought that a security officer can kidnap an ordinary Kenyan, it sends chills down my spine, because then you know you're sort of living in a banana republic. Yes. And therefore, those allegations must be taken seriously, and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations must go to the root of that matter, especially on business disputes. You know, if we are saying that, you know, there are some instances where you could say maybe, but, you know, on business disputes, that an ordinary Kenyan can disappear because we have a trade dispute. I think DCI must get to the bottom of that particular matter. Yes. And that is important to point out, because we want to live in a country where we could do trade and we can have disputes. Yes. But I am assured that the state will protect my life.
Does it worry you that, and it's a good thing that you're on that, so let's talk about, because you've mentioned it. Yes. Does it worry you that we've seen these particular cases appear in this particular government more than...
No, what I would say is this. I cannot say with certainty whether it is true or not. Yes. What I am pointing out is that it is unthinkable and unimaginable that under the 2010 Constitution, we can have security officers allegedly kidnap someone on a trade dispute. And I am saying, and I want to be on record, that must never happen. Yes. Even the mere thought that someone can kidnap you because I disagree with Ragalo, you know, someone kidnaps me. Yes. I mean, that is unthinkable. It must never happen, and we must not go back to the ways of the former or the previous regime. No, sir. But having said that, I must call out Ann Njeri as a fraud for what she is. She's a big fraud. And I'll tell you who is Ann and why Ann is a fraud. Number one, let us look at the figure in dispute, 17 billion worth of fuel. In this current regime, we have a shortage of dollar. Okay? Now, if you convert 17 billion Kenya shillings into dollar, you are unlikely, and the reason why government got into government-to-government framework was because we were having a run on the dollar, where under the OTS system, open tender system, if an OMC was given a tender, they would be going all over the banks looking for dollar. And that was creating some kind of pressure on the dollar. And government decided to alleviate that, not to necessarily, you know, it's just temporary, and do that 6 months renewable under the government-to-government deal. So getting an equivalent of 17 billion Kenya shillings in dollar in Kenyan banks today is impractical and is almost impossible. In fact, I tell you, Simba, if she went to a local bank to look for 17 billion Kenya shillings, it would raise eyebrows not just with the CBK, but also with the Financial Reporting Center, which we have in Kenya, okay? Secondly, she's saying that the fuel belongs to her. Maybe yes, maybe not, but I'll tell you why that's a fraud also. When you import fuel under a credit line, and the bank will give you letters of credit. Now, against letters of credit, you will get a bill of lading from the supplier. Yes. Okay? Now, when you get a bill of lading, the bank will only pay the supplier and I want you to get this very clearly. Once against documents. So when the ship docks and an SGS report is done and a deep test verifies that the fuel subscribes to the Kenyan standards of fuel, is only when the bank will pay. So that means there should even be no dispute of who the fuel belongs to, because one, the bill of lading is clear. Okay. Second, from where you got lines from your bank, the bank knows that this is your fuel. Lastly, why Ann Njeri Njoroge is a fraud. She says she started this business in 2009. You know, sometimes Kenyans, because of politics, we are treated to a lot of charade and gimmicks that we get lost in the bigger picture. She says she started business of fuel in 2009.
How old was she?
Now, I'm even not worried about how old she was. But she says in her own statement, which is very peculiar, after being kidnapped for a whole week, you can talk like a tape recorder. She says that the ministry informed her that she must get licenses in order for her to trade in fuel. That was last week. Now, we all know, those of us who have traded in fuel, you cannot trade in fuel in Kenya without an EPRA license.
That's true.
Either as an OMC,
yes,
as an exporter, or a retailer. You must get licensing from EPRA. Now, Simba, how do you commit 17 billion Kenya shillings